Okay, joining us now, good friend of the John Fredericks Radio Network, frequent guest on our show, shaker, mover, making things happen, 1st District in Texas, former judge, Republican Congressman Louie Ghomert. Congressman, good to have you, sir.
Always good to talk to you, John. Thank you. And you really don't mince words. But wouldn't it have been nice if our president showed the same compassion for American victims of radical Islam as he has for those who are coming and inflicting the terrorism on us?
Well, you would think, but, we have to be, according to Barack Obama, President Obama, sir, we have to be very careful in the way we frame these words, like we can't call a bomb a bomb. Now it's a potential cat litter explosive device or something. We can't call a terrorist. We call them an alleged assailant. We can't call them Muslim, Islamist, terrorist radicals because that's racial profiling. So we can't identify the enemy, and we can't even identify the weapon because that's somehow, if you call it a bomb, somehow that's racist. Congressman, what the heck is going on?
Well, the more you study what this administration has done, the more damage you see. People keep wondering, how does the FBI, how does our intelligence, how do they keep missing these very clear signs? They keep calling them lone wolves. And even when there's 3 of them working together, this administration said, well, it was 3 lone wolves working together. Well, they're not lone wolves. But I thought Patrick Poole had the better term. If you notice that they have always had contact, it seems, with these terrorists. And as Patrick Poole said, they're not lone wolves. They're known wolves. Same with Rahami. His own father had called him in as a terrorist, and the FBI later said, well, his father recanted. He had stabbed his own brother. If they had just bothered to take the fact that his father said he was a terrorist, looked at his social media, looked at his travel record, and maybe inquired of him what he had been studying, who he had been studying, and maybe talked to people at the mosque how he'd been acting, they might have known, except for one small problem. We have this administration purged the training materials of the FBI, so they don't know what to look for in a radical. All they know is that these radicals are not really Islamists. And I have had numerous Muslims in the world say, as long as the United States refuses to call these people radical Islamists, then what chance do we Muslims have to clean out Islam? Because they say, no, the United States says these are not Islamists. Well, Obama had a little bit of training in Islam in his Muslim school in Indonesia, in elementary school, but the world-renowned expert on Islam has his Ph.D. from the University of Baghdad in Islamic Studies, happens to be the leader of the Islamic State. He probably is a better expert on what it is than the president is. But unfortunately, our FBI, our intelligence, they're not allowed to hear from people that have spent their adult lives studying radical Islam. They're only allowed to be trained. They're only trained by people who are approved basically by CARE, with ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. So when you got the Muslim Brotherhood approving who gets to train our FBI and our intelligence people, it explains a lot about how they're missing clues on identifying radical Islamists.
Congressman Louie Ghomert, Republican 1st District, Texas, former judge. Congressman, let me just ask you this. As you outline that, where you've got Muslim Brotherhood operatives who have obviously penetrated the U.S. government to the point where they're dictating how we do our law enforcement training at the federal level. How'd they get there?
Well, we got there by having a president that was, exactly as you outlined at the start of the segment. He really is concerned about, not offending these radical Islamists, so you can't call them what they are. I know back April 10th through 12th of 2000, not April, August 10th through 12th of 2011, Steve Coughlin, who used to brief the Joint Chiefs on radical Islam, he and some other guys that have spent their adult lives studying radical Islam were going to do a 2-day seminar conference on training law enforcement around the country on radical Islam. These guys know it. Mm-hmm. They know what they believe. They know what to look for. They know what questions to ask. And when CARE heard about this conference going on at Langley to train the nation's law enforcement, they called somebody at the White House. Somebody at the White House called Langley. They canceled the conference and then promptly issued new directives on who would be allowed to train our federal officials and who would be allowed to train our law enforcement officials. And basically, they had to pass the test from CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood operatives. And so that's how you get here. I know I warned Janet Napolitano and the Homeland Security for a number of years. In her top advisory council, there was a guy that the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood had approved an article applauding the 6 top operatives of the Muslim Brotherhood who were advisors to Obama. They named them. And that included El Biari from Texas, who was in the top advisory council. I kept warning about this guy. Anybody that's a listed speaker at the Ayatollah Khomeini Man of Vision for the 20th Century big conference is probably not the best guy to be advising Homeland Security, but he was a top advisor. And then we found out that he had used the security clearance that Napolitano gave him, downloaded 2 documents from a secure source, and was trying to peddle them to a national magazine, and fortunately they turned him down. Secretary Napolitano would not even investigate. She said she did, but they never even inquired who the national magazine was. They just said it never happened, whereas her chief of staff confirmed to the top law enforcement officer in Texas that, yes, she knew all about it, that he had personally briefed her all about what El Biari is doing. They wouldn't get rid of him. It wasn't until he finally tweeted out, after some people got their heads cut off, that, the international caliphate is inevitable, so Americans just need to relax and get used to the idea. They finally let him just rotate off the advisory council. But then you have like Imam Majid. He was president of the Islamic Society of North America, named co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation terrorism financing trial. And apparently he continues to be a favorite with the president and advises the president. We know he's advised him on at least one major speech. He's allowed inner sanctum in the State Department where most people can't go. But these are the kind of people that the president surrounds himself with, and Homeland Security gets advice from.
Congressman, whatever you think of Janet Napolitano, she was not an incompetent woman. She has a pretty accomplished career. So if it's not incompetence, what's the objective here? Like, as you outlined, like she wouldn't even investigate. She didn't really care. She's not incompetent. She's intelligent. No question about that. You look at her record. What's the objective?
I don't know, but she repeatedly misrepresented things before our committee. And, it just didn't seem to bother her. But I don't know. There's been so much written about Obama's view of America and the world. They weren't proud of America until, he was elected. Well, I've been proud of America so many times. But he seems to have the worldview that the world has not been as good a place as it could be and won't be until America is not a superpower. That we bring America's power down, bring our economic power down, and then the rest of the world will magically go up. Unfortunately, it's not a zero-sum game like that. People all over the world have told me they recognize that their only chance for peace is if the United States stays strong. There were some Africans from Togo that had told me when I was over there that, we were so excited when you elected your first black president, but since he's been president, we've seen America get weaker and weaker. And they said, you've got to tell the people in Washington to stop getting weaker, because as you get weaker, we suffer more. Mm-hmm. We know we're all going to heaven because these were Christians, but they said, but our only chance for peace in this life is if there's a strong America. And this president seems to think the less strong America is, the better off the world is, because he has brought us down economically, militarily, about every way you can think of.
So let me ask you this, Congressman Louie Ghomert. Is it fair to say, or do you believe that President Obama has meticulously surrounded himself with Muslim Brotherhood advisors that have now, in a sense, infiltrated U.S. government?
Well, we know he's had at least a few, and the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt said that there were 6, and they named them all. He's got plenty of advisors that are not Muslim Brotherhood, but they want to appear to these people to be so open-minded and so fair that we're doing great damage to Christians in the Middle East and Syria and the world, while we bend over backwards to seem to want to accommodate radical Islam. So when CARE gets to say who can teach about Islam and who can't, then our FBI, our intelligence, is going to continue. As one of our intelligence officers said to me, he said, we have blinded ourselves of the ability to see our enemy. And that's what's happened under Obama. And if Hillary's president after Obama, we get another Clinton administration, she's assured us we're going to get more of that, more of the same.
So far we've taken in 10,000 Syrian refugees, whether vetted or not. They're costing us $70,000 each. Everyone we take in takes up a seat in a school. Schools are overcrowded. Goes to the emergency room in the hospital. That's overcrowded. Obamacare, that's a disaster. So they come into the country. Clinton and Obama says it should be 100,000, so they want to increase it tenfold. Meantime, the Gulf states, Kuwait, who, by the way, we liberated with our blood.
Yep.
Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudis, Dubai, they've taken in 0, not 10,000, not 1,000, not 0 Syrian refugees. So yesterday, Donald Trump says, I've had enough. We need to just ban right now, just pause all immigration from any country that has a history of having Islamist extremist terrorists there. No Syrian refugees at all. We can't vet them. We don't have the money. We're done with that. Clinton, Obama calling for a tenfold increase. Who's right?
Well, they've made clear that Trump is just overreacting. He's such a reactionary that all we need to do, John, is put our faith in the Homeland Security Department and State Department, which just they were supposed to have deported criminal aliens from troubled countries, and they made the simple mistake any of us could make. Instead of deporting the criminal aliens from out of the United States, they accidentally made them U.S. citizens, and we're supposed to trust these people. So it's kind of hard when you see in the news that they've made this kind of disastrous mistake. How do you make that mistake? Oh, we meant to deport them, but we gave them U.S. citizenship instead, and they're a threat to our well-being. It's easy for me to understand how Trump really may be onto something here.
Well, I think he is onto something, and I think for the average American, Congressman Ghomert, they really can't understand why we would be allowing additional people in our country when we're broke other countries who we support militarily and otherwise, one who we liberated, take none. They're rich. We got $20 trillion in debt,
yeah,
plus we can't vet them.
Socialists are supposed to take utilitarian approaches, and if you really want to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, well, you can house 12 Syrian refugees in the Middle East for the same cost of bringing one to the United States. Why wouldn't we do flyover area, create a safe zone so the refugees can stay in the Middle East and we can save and feed and protect 12 times as many as we can bringing one to the United States? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Well, it would, but that wouldn't tie into President Obama's stated goal of transforming America. It also wouldn't allow for...
That's what it comes back to.
That's right. It wouldn't allow for additional people to come in, get a fast track to citizenship, put them on EBT cards, give them other forms of government assistance and welfare so they're accustomed to entitlements, so that when they're able to vote, they vote in perpetuity for the party that will perpetuate the checks that they receive as they transform America. That's the real goal. Why don't we just state it?
Well, I think you put your finger on it. When we wonder why these things are happening, if you realize the stated goal by President Obama was to fundamentally transform America, I would say if that's the goal, he's done an incredible job. I never would have dreamed that when we elected an African-American president that he would be able to convince African-Americans across the country that there's more racism now than there ever was, and he has divided America like I really didn't believe would happen. I thought he would be like my favorite coach from high school who happened to be African-American. When we were playing for his team, he brought us together. There was no racism. All of us were in the same boat, and we were worked over pretty good, but he brought us together. And I thought, well, silver lining, this president will be able to bring us together, and he has done just the opposite. He has done everything he can to divide America like I haven't seen it in my lifetime.
Congressman, we're out of time. I want to thank Congressman from Texas, Republican 1st District,
Thank you, John.
Louie Ghomert, for being with us.